After my husband's death, his family took everything, except my strength, but my revenge is unpredictable. The day my husband died, the house went silent in a way I had never heard before. Not peaceful, not calm, empty. I sat on the edge of our bed and stared at the dent his body used to make on the mattress. 42 years of marriage, gone in one breath. My name is Margaret Collins. Most people call me Maggie. I was 68 years old, a grandma with soft hands, tired knees, and a heart that had just cracked open. I thought grief would be the worst part. I was wrong. Tom Collins was my husband, a simple man, a hard worker. We built our life brick by brick, no inheritance, no shortcuts, just long days, sore backs, and hope. That house on Willow Lane, we built it together. I painted the walls. He fixed the roof. We argued about the kitchen tiles for 6 months. That house was our story. 3 days after the funeral, his family came to read the will. They came smiling. The living room was full, too full. My sister-in-law, Linda, sat on my couch like she owned it already. My brother-in-law, Rick, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, tapping his foot like he had somewhere better to be. Tom's nephew, Jason, was there too. He kept looking around the room, eyes shiny, like he was shopping. I clutched my tea mug with both hands. My fingers were shaking. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Margaret," he said gently, "are you ready?" I nodded. I trusted Tom. I trusted love. That was my second mistake. When the lawyer finished reading, the room felt colder. The house was not mine. The land was not mine. The savings account drained. Everything was left to Tom's family. Everything. Linda gasped like she was shocked, but her smile slipped out anyway. Rick didn't even pretend. He smiled wide, like he'd just won a prize on TV. Jason whispered. Uncle Tom knew what he was doing. I couldn't breathe. I looked at the lawyer. There must be a mistake. He avoided my eyes. "There's a clause," he said. "You have 30 days to vacate the property." 30 days. After 42 years. Linda leaned forward. "Don't worry, Maggie. We'll give you time." Her voice was sweet, too sweet. Rick laughed. "She's a strong woman. She'll figure it out." I stood up slowly. My knees hurt. My chest burned. "You knew," I said. They didn't answer. That was answer enough. That night I slept on the couch. They thought a grandma with a suitcase was the end of the story. They were wrong. I left that house with one bag and my purse. Linda stood on the porch with her arms crossed. Rick didn't even look at me. Jason waved like it was a joke. "Take care, Maggie," Linda said. "Try not to be bitter." I smiled again. That smile scared her a little. I could see it. I moved into a small rented room above a bakery on Main Street. The owner was a kind woman named Susan. She smelled like bread and kindness. "You'll hear the ovens early," she warned. "I like mornings," I said. That was true now. At night, I sat on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. I replayed every moment of the will, every look, every lie. Tom loved me, I knew that. So why did he leave me with nothing? That question kept me awake. 1 week later, I found the answer by accident. I was cleaning out my purse when I noticed a folded paper I didn't recognize. It was old and creased. My name was written on it in Tom's handwriting. My hands shook. I unfolded it slowly. "Maggie," it read, "if you are reading this, something has gone very wrong." My heart started racing. The letter was dated 6 months before Tom died. He wrote about pressure, about his brother Rick asking questions, about Linda pushing him to protect the family. Then one sentence stopped me cold. "They think you won't fight back." I laughed. Then I cried. Then I kept reading. Tom explained that he had signed papers while sick, very sick. He said Rick brought the lawyer, not our lawyer. Rick. "They told me it was temporary," Tom wrote. "They said it was just to avoid taxes." My jaw tightened. Tom wasn't stupid, but he trusted his family. He trusted too much. Just like I did. At the bottom of the letter was one line written darker than the rest. Check the blue toolbox. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I stood up. The blue toolbox was still in the garage. I knew because I had seen it when Linda was bragging about selling Tom's tools. She didn't know what it was. But I did. Tom kept everything important in that box. And suddenly, I remembered something else. The garage had a crawl space. That night, I drove past the house slowly. The lights were on. Jason's truck was still there. They were laughing inside, drinking, celebrating. I parked down the street and walked back quietly. My knees hurt, my back ached. But my mind was sharp. The garage door was locked. I smiled. Tom always had a spare key. I reached under the flower pot by the fence. There it was. Some habits never die. Inside the garage, the smell of oil and dust wrapped around me like a memory. I crouched and pulled open the crawl space. The blue toolbox was right where Tom left it. I dragged it out and opened it. Inside were folders, USB drives, envelopes, and a small notebook. My breath caught. The notebook was filled with dates, names, numbers, property numbers, bank transfers, signatures. Rick's name appeared again and again. Linda, too. My hands stopped shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. This was theft. I took photos of everything with my phone, every page, every document. Then I put the toolbox back exactly how I found it. Before leaving, I stood in the garage for a moment. "Thank you, Tom," I whispered. The next morning, I visited an old friend. Her name was Carol. We used to volunteer together at the library. She wore bright scarves and asked sharp questions. Carol used to be a paralegal. When I told her my story, she didn't interrupt. When I showed her the photos, her face changed. "Oh, Maggie," she said quietly, "they messed up." I smiled. Over the next few weeks, I became busy. Very busy. I made phone calls, I asked questions, I listened more than I spoke. People talk when they think you're harmless, especially when you're a grandma. Rick called me one afternoon. "Just checking in," he said. "Hope you're settling in." "I am," I said sweetly. "Life is full of surprises." He laughed nervously. "So, no hard feelings?" "Oh no," I said. "I'm very patient." That made him pause. Linda started posting pictures online. New furniture, wine glasses, smiling faces in my kitchen. Our kitchen. Friends commented how lucky she was. I commented too. "Enjoy it," I wrote. "Nothing lasts forever." She deleted it. One night, Susan knocked on my door. "There's a man asking for you," she whispered. My heart jumped. I walked downstairs slowly. A stranger stood there, tall, gray hair, serious eyes. "Margaret Collins?" he asked. "Yes." "My name is Daniel Harris," he said. "I believe you have something that belongs to the truth." I didn't answer. I invited him in. Daniel worked for the county. Not law enforcement. Something quieter. Something scarier. When I showed him the documents, he let out a low whistle. "This explains a lot," he said. "What does?" I asked. He looked at me carefully. "Why your husband's family is very nervous lately." I leaned back in my chair. "Good," I said. The next day, Rick's name appeared in the local paper. Just a small mention. An investigation. Nothing confirmed. Yet, Linda stopped posting pictures. Jason stopped laughing. And my phone rang again. This time, I didn't answer. I sat by the bakery window and watched people pass by. Young couples, old men, kids with backpacks. I sipped my coffee slowly. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was ready. Because they still didn't know everything. And my revenge. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fast. but it was already moving. And they had no idea what was coming next. The first knock came at midnight. Not loud. Careful. Like someone who didn't want to be seen. I froze on my bed above the bakery, listening to the hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the soft ticking of my clock. Susan was asleep. The street was quiet. The knock came again. I slid my feet into my slippers and moved to the door. "Who is it?" I asked. "Margaret," a man whispered. "Please." I opened the door, just enough to see his face. "Jason." He looked nothing like the man who waved at me when I left the house. His eyes were red. His hair was messy. His hands shook like mine had weeks ago. "I just want to talk," he said. "They told me you wouldn't open the door." I stepped aside. That surprised him. Jason sat at the small table by the window. He kept rubbing his palms on his jeans. I poured him coffee even though it was late. "You always did that," he said quietly. "You always offered something." I didn't answer. Finally, he spoke. "They're scared," he said. "Rick and Linda." I raised an eyebrow. "Of what?" He swallowed. "Of you." He told me everything spilled out, like water from a broken cup. Rick had been getting letters. Linda had been calling lawyers. The bank froze one account, then another. "They're blaming each other," Jason said. "Rick says Linda pushed Tom. Linda says Rick lied." I stirred my coffee slowly. "And you?" I asked. He looked down. I didn't know it was like this. I laughed. Not mean. Not loud. Just tired. "That's what everyone says," I told him. Jason leaned forward. "What do you want?" That was the funniest question I'd heard in weeks. "I want the truth," I said, "and what was taken from me." He nodded slowly. I think you're going to get both." The next morning, my phone rang again. This time, it was Linda. I answered. "Maggie," she said, voice shaking, "we need to talk." I smiled into the receiver. "About what?" I asked. "About fixing things." Fixing. Such a small word for such a big mess. We met at a diner near the highway. Neutral ground. Public, smart. Linda arrived first. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was not. "You look well," she said. "I sleep better now," I replied. She stirred her water nervously. "Rick made mistakes," she said quickly. "We all did." I leaned back. "Funny," I said. "You didn't seem confused when you changed the locks." Her face flushed. She reached across the table. "We're family," she whispered. I pulled my hand away. "You forgot that when Tom was alive," I said. Silence fell between us like a wall. She finally sighed. "What do you want?" she asked. I looked her straight in the eye. "I want my house," I said, "and my name cleared." Her mouth opened. "That's not possible," she said. "The papers are fraudulent," I said calmly. She froze. The waitress arrived with coffee. I thanked her kindly. Linda didn't touch hers. "How much do you know?" she asked. I shrugged. "Enough." That was the truth. And not the whole truth. By the end of the week, things started moving fast. Too fast. Rick showed up at my door unannounced. Susan called upstairs. "Maggie, there's a man here. He doesn't look friendly." I went down anyway. Rick stood stiffly, hands in his coat pockets. "We need to end this," he said. I tilted my head. "End what?" He stepped closer. "This investigation. These rumors, you're causing trouble." I laughed. "Rick," I said softly, "you caused trouble the moment you thought I wouldn't notice." He leaned in. "You think anyone will believe you?" he hissed. I met his eyes. "I don't need everyone," I said, "just the right ones." His face went pale. That same night, Daniel Harris called. "They're scrambling," he said, "moving money, making mistakes." I closed my eyes. "Good," I said again. A few days later, something unexpected happened. The house went on the market. My house. Priced low, too low. A panic sale. I drove past it slowly, heart pounding. The lawn was messy, the windows dark. A for sale sign stood where Tom planted roses. I sat in my car and laughed until tears came. They were running. Carol came over that evening with takeout and news. The county found more, she said. Properties tied to Rick's name that don't add up. I took a deep breath. What happens next? She smiled. Next, they start pointing fingers. The phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. Maggie, a man said. This is the attorney representing the Collins estate. I stayed quiet. We'd like to discuss a settlement. Settlement. The word tasted sweet. I didn't agree. Not yet. I wanted them nervous. I wanted them guessing. Because there was still one thing they didn't know. Something Tom hid. Something even I had just discovered that morning. And when it came out, everything would change. The truth came out on a rainy Tuesday. The kind of rain that soaks into your bones and makes everything feel heavier than it already is. I was sitting by the bakery window when Daniel called. It's over, he said. I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. Rick was arrested that morning. Fraud, forgery, elder manipulation. The words sounded unreal when I heard them on the radio, like they belonged to someone else's story. But then they said his name, my brother-in-law, the man who changed my locks. Linda wasn't arrested, but she wasn't smiling anymore either. She showed up at my door that afternoon, mascara streaked, hands shaking. I didn't know it would go this far, she cried. I looked at her for a long time. It always goes this far, I said quietly. You just never think it will catch you. The house came back to me. Not because they were kind. Because the law is patient. And truth is stubborn. When I walked back into that living room, it smelled different. Like Cheuge people had been there. Like lies had sat on my couch. I opened the windows. I let the air in. Tom's final secret came out during the last meeting with the lawyer. There was a second document. Hidden, legal, untouched. Tom had transferred partial ownership of the house to me years ago. Rick never found it, never thought to look. Daniel slid the paper across the table and smiled. Your husband was smarter than they gave him credit for. I touched Tom's signature. I know, I whispered. Jason called me one last time. I'm sorry, he said, and this time I believed him. Be better, I told him. That's apology enough. People in town started treating me differently. Not with pity. With respect. They nodded, smiled, whispered sometimes. I didn't mind. I had my home back. I had my name back. And more importantly, I had myself back. One evening, I sat on the porch Tom built and watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. I rocked slowly, holding a cup of tea. A neighbor waved. I waved back. Life felt quiet again. But not weak. Never weak. Because strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it smiles. And sometimes it lets people think a grandma with a suitcase is the end of the story. When really, that's where it begins. Thanks for watching. Kindly drop your comment about this story. And please subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories.